It'd be so cool.
Yeah. Hi everybody, how are you? Sorry, we were nattering as usual. But I think we started earlier than we usually do, Claire, because it's a big week. We have probably two of the biggest fan favorite chapters in all of A Song of Ice and Fire, Davos 4 and Mel. One Mel. I thought there was two Mel chapters, but I think it's just one Mel chapter. And we're reading from Tyrion 7 discussing Tyrion 7 to Mel tonight in A Dance with Dragons. And next week we'll be doing Reek 3 to Dany 6. I had a misprint. I had Reek 2 down, but it's actually Reek 3. So we'll have Tyrion, Bran, Jon, Dany, and Reek next week. So that'll be a fun week. We're only on Bran 3, actually. I haven't had much Bran. George has said that Bran is becoming his most difficult to write, which is not that surprising.
I think Bran's always been difficult for him to write. I think he's been the least enthusiastic about writing Bran chapters than any other character.
Yeah, and exciting because next week will also be, well, we have one more stream before the release of Fire and Blood, so I'm very excited for Fire and Blood. I'm very, very, very excited for Fire and Blood. So hi to Johnny Be Crazy, who is in Olive Garden, probably having some lovely breadsticks or something. AU, how are you, AU? Sunny is here. Hello, Sunny. And Bran the Builder. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I am a bit high on Pringles and green tea. I may have to text the hand to bring in more tea, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, the longest, I should say, hi, Claire.
Hi, hello, hi. I'm just quickly trying to read through my notes because, I was rushing around doing some laundry before the beginning of the podcast. So I'm trying to make sense of what I've written, actually.
Well, it was, this week I think has been some of my favorite chapters so far in Dance, actually, with the exception of the Tyrion one. I like the Tyrion one. I feel like the Tyrion one could have done with a bit of editing.
Yeah, it was very long. It was very long.
Compared to what we get from like some of the other chapters in this collection this week. I don't know.
I mean, I suppose if you read, it's a typical chapter that gets you first time, but then on subsequent rereads, it's like, oh yeah, we already know this. We know who it is. We know it's Jorah Mormont. We know that he's going to, so it's like, it feels like a bit of filler to us on a reread. But there are still a couple of little things that you can make that I've made a note of in this chapter about just the links between certain things that you wouldn't necessarily. I can't work out. There is definitely some kind of duality going on. It is ice and fire, but there are lots of other different dualities going on, and they seem to be lots of different ones. And I can't, the 1,000, for example, for me,
it's broken my brain. Because every time I read it, I go 1,000, 1,000, 1,000.
Well, but
it's a bit of a twitch.
Do you remember for this book, though, at the beginning of this book, and I said I'm going to, rather than it just being apparent when it arrived, when it's happened X amount of times in this chapter, it's there and you can reference it, but also I'm now looking for, is there a particular thing that it seems to link to? And this is the first time, really, this group of chapters that we've got this week where 1,000 definitely seems to link in more to the fiery god and the R'hllor, and there seems to be much more of a connection with that number. But I also think there's a huge, there's a duality, and then there's you would expect certain factors to be enemies, but then I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't expect Mel to be thriving at the Wall.
No.
But yet she is. Her magic is stronger than ever at the Wall. So there's a duality there, but also something that's kind of complementary understanding of each other. Is there maybe potential balance there? Who knows? But there is a little bit of reference to that in this chapter where we kind of come across the Red Temple, which is huge. I'd forgotten that this was a massive, massive structure. Like, I think it's described as being like 3 times as big as the Sept of Baelor. And there are lots of defenders of the temple. So there's this group that sounds kind of similar, parallel to back in Westeros. We've got the what they called the weaponized faith. What are they called?
The faith militant. The
faith militant. Yeah. Well, here you've got at the temple, at the Red Temple, you've got the Fiery Hand, who are defenders of the temple, and they sound pretty fierce. And there's 1,000 of them, never more, never less. There's always 1,000. So that's where there's a big connection with that number and that particular faith. But yeah, there's a couple of little nuggets like that in this chapter.
There is. I'm being a bit unfair, I know. But thanks for stopping by, Bran. Thank you so much. I think there's a couple of nice I think it's a good chapter for characterization as well as world building. Because I think through Dany's eyes we have gotten a very tame kind of version of Jorah. Even in the chapter we had this week, she kind of misses him. But really, there's a reason why Ned Stark was after him, and he's so familiar with how to be a slaver. He's
a brute.
And like he knows the right place to stay so you can chain up your slave. He knows the right manacles to get for Tyrion, and Tyrion to the point where Tyrion can't walk. And it's like, I think we're supposed to see this guy as a brute. Sorry, my hand is coming.
Oh, lovely. That looks like an enormous cup of tea.
Someone said to me during the week, I said on my live stream on my other channel that I was having a little cup of tea, and they're like the biggest mug ever. But yeah, Jorah, I don't know. There's something. I think the show Jorah has tainted us towards the cruelty in this, for sure. What will he be willing to do to prove his loyalty to Dany that might be detrimental to her? Like Barristan doesn't mind if he has to hurt Dany's feelings in order to get her to do the right thing or to see the right way. He's not going to sugarcoat stuff. But what could Jorah do? I don't know. I guess the big thing in this chapter, I suppose I'm jumping on a bit, but the widow of the waterfront.
Yes. So just to obviously set the context, we're in Volantis. And this is where we meet this strange woman who talks about whether they're trying to get a ship, aren't they? That's the conversation that they're having. They're trying to get a ship. She seems like some. To be honest with you, I was in and out of this chapter. It was kind of on in the background. Isn't she somebody? Didn't she? Well, who was her husband for her to be a famous widow?
Oh God, I can't remember. But he was very well off, and she was a pleasure. What do they call her? A pleasure slave or something like that. And
okay, yeah.
So she had she has cut the tattoo slave out of her face and all that kind of thing. But he fell in love with her and gave her freedom, and then, which was a huge scandal, and then she inherited everything.
Right.
And now all the men that serve her are called the widow's sons. But yeah, so she's a freed slave. So like, there's never really a doubt who she's going to support.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's pretty obvious it's going to be Dany.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's who she is. Although I think by the description of her, there might be maybe some Valyrian in her.
Well, she's described as a witch, and I remember there's a little bit where they're talking about ships, and she's talking about She makes reference to a ship with a body in brine and a red priest. Is that Maester Aemon?
Or putting Brian and a red priest. Who's the red priest at Maester Aemon then?
No, yeah, no, there isn't.
Well, it could be Taurus. Like the body in brine could be Beric. Like he might like kind of salt water pickling, or body in brine. No, sure, that would be Cat, because they found her in water.
Could be, yeah, could be. It was just a really peculiar reference. And well, yeah, this is. Well, she's not going to give them a ship. But this is.
The ship wouldn't reach Dany. Isn't that right? Or Benero, the ship wouldn't reach Dany.
I don't know. I know that the Widow's Witch is interested in them getting to Dany, so that she gets the message that, you know, as we find out later on, everyone has been like, she's coming back, she's going to rescue, you know, she's going to come back and sort all this out. And they're waiting and waiting and waiting, as is the Widow's Witch. But yeah, this is, I mean, there's a lot of political stuff going on in the background here that's very different to Westeros. The whole election of the, you know, there's a feverish atmosphere going on around the, like, politically. There's an election happening with the Triarchs, and, you know, there's a whole backdrop of that going on, which is a very, 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 very different landscape and culture to what we used to.
You can see why people believe Tyrion will reinvent the political social structure in Westeros, because he is getting to see he's getting to see up close and personal different methods of rule.
Yes, absolutely.
An election is a bit excessive.
Yeah. And then we see Penny.
I mean, I guess that's why this chapter is so long, because it is building up to Penny, and Penny will be a very significant character. So it is kind of giving us an insight into what drives her, what makes her tick, I guess. Hi, Mackenzie. Thanks for coming along. Yeah, so I guess in that sense, it's building up to Penny. But yeah, her game plan isn't very good. Like, it doesn't take Jorah much effort to...
No, just pick her up.
Yeah, poor Penny.
So... there's a lot of, like I said, this is the kind of chapter, if you read it the first time, there's lots of, it's kind of lots of revelations. Certainly to Tyrion, we're looking through Tyrion's eyes here, and that he figures out that you know, this big bear knight is Jorah Mormont. We obviously knew that already. But also he finds out, because he's thinking all the way through, this is a very different Tyrion, remember. This is a kind of almost suicidal Tyrion. It just kind of feels like he hasn't got a massive amount of to live for anymore. He's interested to find out what happens with things like the Golden Company and young Griff, but there's a lot to him that's pretty resigned as well. However, and I think that is because of this build up to him being convinced. Of course, we know, you know, this, we already know that this isn't the case, but Tyrion believes Jorah Mormont is taking him back to Westeros for his sister to behead him. So he's a bit pissed off about that. And then he realizes at the end of the chapter, that's not the queen that he's taking me to. This is starting to begin to give Tyrion a bit more kind of a purpose of and a drive and a direction. So So I don't know. I mean, I think I mean you know, we're moving into the experience of Tyrion being the slave, and I don't know. Maybe I'm being optimistic, but I feel as though perhaps I'm getting over anyway this kind of slump that I've had with Tyrion for the last.
We haven't got into the dodgy Penny stuff yet, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Dodgy the way he treats her. I am trying to confirm something. I believe I should have written it down, but I believe that when he is thinking about Griff going west, uses the words that basically Aegon took the bait. I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
So kind of when I was, because
yes,
I said last week that I feel like Tyrion wasn't just trying to wasn't just trying to be troublesome Tyrion. I think like there was definite motive behind what he was doing.
Well, I think what he wants is somebody to go and end Cersei.
But not necessarily end Lannisters or Westeros. Like I don't like I think if they took out Cersei, I don't automatically think Tyrion would put a Targaryen on the throne.
No, but I think she's the only one that he thinks is capable of killing him.
But I think sending Aegon west without Dany may give Tyrion an opportunity to get rid of the Aegon threat and then deal with Dany separately, rather than them combining forces.
Yeah, that's.
I'm thinking too much into it, but when he said that he took the bait, like I'm pretty sure that's what he said. I think that's what he said.
He did. Yeah.
Like I think Tyrion is one of these. He gives the impression that he moves with whatever happens, and that's certainly true. He has to kind of improvise a lot, but we also saw in Clash especially that he thinks multiple steps ahead, and very similar to what we'd expect from Littlefinger.
Yeah,
you know, thinking multiple steps ahead, whereas Varys and Illyrio give the impression that they're actually, according to John Connington, they've been much more improvisational with the decision making. We thought that maybe they were many steps ahead, but Tyrion is kind of a combination of Littlefinger and Varys, in that he can improvise, but he's also thinking many paths ahead.
He's an adaptable forward thinker.
Definitely.
Yeah. Again, putting aside what you've seen in the TV show, what kind of relationship do you think Tyrion will have with Daenerys? It's inevitable that they're going to meet they've met from afar in the books up to this stage. They haven't had a conversation or anything. They've not been introduced, but they've, he was kind of performing for her at the wedding before she flew off on Drogon. But do you think there will be a relationship? If they do you think that what kind of?
I think we'll be surprised how close they'll get, how quickly they'll get close. Anyway, like we've seen that with John, for instance, and certain characters that have come into his life. Like we haven't seen that much. Like it's only been really, if you add up all the times they've met in chapters, it hasn't been a huge amount, and yet there's a definite connection there between the two of them.
Yeah.
So I feel like that will probably happen with Tyrion and Dany pretty quickly. What I'm really hoping for. Well, actually, let me ask you: whose POV would you like to see their first meeting through? I want to see Tyrion because I think he'll underestimate her.
Yes, that would be more entertaining, I think. But
I'd also like maybe a Jon Sam thing where we might see the meeting from both sides. I think that'd be fascinating.
Yeah, that would be. That would be. I think it'd be interesting though to see through Daenerys' point of view, because you'd be able to get. I suppose it's just because I'm looking for answers. You'd be able to get more of an idea of whether or not, just simply whether or not she's going to be able to see him as a potential ally, or whether she's just not going to be able to get past that. It's that, young girl versus queen again, isn't it? Is she going to be able to be mature and take his counsel? Or
when you think about it, the POVs that have had meetings with Tyrion, numerous meetings, Kat and Cersei, Jaime a little bit and Jon just a little bit. But really, Kat and Cersei are really, and it was all negative.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to get Dany's point of view, because we haven't really had, with the exception of Jon, we haven't really had an overwhelming positive view of Tyrion from
a female point of view.
And Jon doesn't like him, Jon Connington, but they weren't in the same vicinity when Jon's POV came along.
Sansa did have quite a positive take on Tyrion.
I forgot about Sansa.
You would have expected, but you see that as a reader, you see that as Sansa growing up and being a bit more sensible, but actually maybe she just does see him as that he's not that bad,
Mainly female POVs that have like an ongoing like back and forth with him.
Yeah.
Like Jon Connington, obviously, but he's not around when his POV comes up. I feel like Tyrion isn't around for a lot of Jaime's POVs. Like we have Jaime and Tyrion in Tyrion's POV, and then the Jon is the first time we get to meet Jon 1 is the first time we get to meet Tyrion. So I've never thought about the fact that the majority of our Tyrion observations come from women.
And Sansa, just thinking about Sansa again, she does think about him a lot in a reasonably positive way.
Yeah. Are we frozen? Did somebody say we're frozen? I hope not. No, I think we're still try. Oh well, yeah. But yeah, no, you're right. Sansa was really the only one that's had kind of more or less a positive thing. Jon as well, I guess. Jon Snow, but yeah. So that was all I really had for Tyrion 7, as long as that chapter was.
Yes, it was very long.
Like there's good world building kind of tidbits in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we come on to Jon 6. Jon 6. This is the second Jon chapter in a row where letters have come into play. Because he's Lord Commander, this isn't that surprising, but I feel like it's all leading up to the pink letter as well.
Yeah.
The letters that he's getting, and interestingly, they're all reporting discontent from various places, but they still want more. They want more men, and Jon is wondering where all these men will come from. And I started wondering, where will all these men come from?
There are massive parallels between Jon's situation and Daenerys' situation right now.
And Wayward Manderley.
Yes. She's being told that she's got a war within the walls and a war outside the city walls as well. And it's exactly the same with Jon. He can't turn anywhere without there being, there's bad feeling at the wall at the moment, real bad feeling. There's a lot of build up. I think there's going to be a couple of 2 or 3 Jon chapters where there's more of a build up happening than sort of actual action.
I mean, there's so much foreshadowing for what happens to him as well. But I just started thinking, where will they go? Will Jon be in charge of convincing Northerners to go north? Could it be Davos bringing people from Skagos? How will they get men to this area, or will they need to ever get them to this area? The other thing that kind of stuck with me at the beginning of this chapter is Thorne saying that others remember even when they're dead, like they remember their past lives and that he'll come back from, kind of thing. That if he gets killed, others, the the whites can still remember.
Oh yeah, he did, didn't he? Yeah.
So
yeah,
it made me. Well, it could be a pile of horseshit, but like it seems like a real childish threat if it's not true, or if there's not some sort of truth in it, right?
Oh, it's that. I suppose to me it was a variation on, you know, if I die, I'll come back and haunt you, sort of thing.
But even that, like, if you really mean to like I would say that like to my husband, joking. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't for me, that kind of threat doesn't
carry a threat.
Weight unless there's the truth in it. So
possibly, quite possibly, yeah.
It made me wonder: is there a crack in the spell of the others?
You might have hit the nail on the head there, because remember, is it Nettle? Was she called Nettle?
She looks at him, yeah.
And that's his last words in that chapter. He says, "She sees me."
Yeah. He's saying, "Oh no, really didn't want to go ranging with Benjen and resented Gior." Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. And Jon thinks, I don't want him to be hurt. Like, I really don't want him to die. He's a brother. He should come back. And I feel like, Jon, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. You're allowed to be a human being.
He's
more wolfish than
he is. He's convincing himself, isn't he? And he, you know, it's true. But the war is between the dead and the living. And
Tor is saying, if I become one of the dead, I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
Like, he isn't even making it about, like, it's almost treasonous what he said. And it's like,
there's a massive amount of disrespect going on left, right, and centre, everywhere, and he's getting it from like Rattleshirt. He takes a good beating from who he thinks is Rattleshirt. This is a kind of, this chapter for me is a sort of prelude to the Mel chapter a bit later on. They're very much kind of, you can imagine this being in, you know, within a couple of days of each other, these incidents. But it's interesting to get inside the mind of Jon sometimes, because you get him reflecting on Benjen, wondering about Benjen, what happened there. He thinks about the implications of the letters that are being sent from each of the commanders. There was one interesting little tidbit as well at the beginning of this chapter, which is Ed, Dolores Ed, when he comes up with his little sayings now and again. But he talks about how he had been dreaming that he was Lord Commander.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, that did happen in the TV show. Whether or not that's going to happen in the books, but that's a big dollop of foreshadowing there, if that's the case.
Well, yeah, and again, with Mel later on, I think you're right. These two chapters are very closely linked. With Mel later on, her power is growing at the Wall, and I don't necessarily think it's because, I don't think it's the longer she's at the Wall, the more her power grows. I think magic around the Wall is increasing. And that might be impacting on how prophetic even like the most non-magical people are, like Dolores said, like dreams are actually becoming more prophetic because of the heightened magic around the Wall, potentially. So
does 1,000 just equate to magic? Is that what the code is?
I think so, yeah, because we have 1,000 smells here, don't we?
The night came alive with 1,000 smells. So at that moment, I think it's almost like Jon seems to experience warging slightly differently to Bran. He seems to have these like very momentary, like almost mini warg episodes. Whereas for Bran, he seems to be inhabiting summer for quite long periods of time. But with Jon, you get that, you know, to me, that's him having like a mini warg episode, just him thinking to himself, the night came alive with 1,000 smells. You wouldn't get that, you would not get that response from a human male, but you would from ghost. Yeah.
I've said this for a long time. I think Jon is a stronger warg, not a stronger skin changer, but a stronger warg than Bran is, because Bran seems to suggest more effort in warging Summer. And yes, he stays in Summer for a long time, and he wants to stay in Summer for a long time. But there are times when he's in Summer that he loses Bran entirely, whereas Jon and Ghost are very seamless.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's no effort.
It's like he can just take a deep breath, inhabit Ghost for a moment, sense all the senses that his wolf is experiencing, and then breathe out, and he's back to Jon again. It's not like that with Bran.
No, it's more, but maybe that's because Bran has more options.
Yes.
Skin changer. So he kind of has to concentrate maybe more when he wants Summer, whereas Jon only has Ghost. That's how I've always thought of it. And I feel like we're going to see a very similar thing with Rickon and Shaggy Dog. It'll be very close to Jon's experience. But Radio Westeros have a great thing on this with Mel. That she's using the, what's she called, the lust powder later on. She's using the lust powder she's trying to use it on Jon, and that's why Jon sees it.
That's something that I wonder if that links into what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, when we get to the Mel chapter, my note was, is Mel abusing Devon?
Oh.
and because there seems to be a very weird kind of eroticism thing going on there between her and Devon. He's half in love with her, but you're trying to figure out whether she's being protective of him or not. But there's something about how where she draws her strength from as well. I'm trying to sit, my notes are all over. Yeah, R'hllor provides her with all the nourishment that she needs, but she doesn't need to sleep. She doesn't need to eat. She's drawing her power from somewhere, and I think it's something to do with not necessarily sexual attraction, but it's almost like enchanting men.
Yeah, Mel reminds me of, do you know that film where David Bowie plays Tesla and Hugh Jackman is in it and he's a musician? God, what's it called? It's so good.
The
Illusionist, is it? Is it The Illusionist?
Stuart, what's that film with Hugh Jackman where he's a magician? The Prestige.
The Prestige, yeah. I think that's the one with David Bowie as well, right? And he's trying to
Christian Bale.
Yeah, Christian Bale, that's it. He's trying to figure out what magic Christian Bale has.
Yeah.
Like, it's like everything else. Christian Bale is just using tricks. There is no magic. It's the same with Mel here. There is real magic that she's desperate to get hold of, and she can kind of tap into it, but there's a lot of fake magic. There's a lot of fake magic with Mel.
There's a lot of like just conjurers tricks and things like that, and just illusions.
He's going to jump out at any time. Debbie McGee is Devon.
But it's this, to me, this R'hllor nourishes me means she's drawing her strength from something, some kind of, there's religion, and then there's religions that I don't know whether you'd call them, I suppose in modern day times you'd say miracles, but like demonstration of magical power that's linked to that particular religion. And you get it with the old gods and ice magic, although we know there's very little that we know about ice magic compared to fire magic, like resurrection and even blood magic we know a little bit about. But is the thousand, again going back to that, is referenced several times in this chapter, and I haven't really made too many notes about it, but when Jon hears the red voices singing to praising the red god, he describes it as sounding like 1,000 leagues away. And then he talks about the smell, about the night coming alive with 1,000 smells. So it seems to be linked to religion, but where religion demonstrates some kind of magical power.
It seems that R'hllor is worshipped around the same time every day. It's very... It's like we have religions like that in our own world.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the sun goes down, that's when you start worshipping. So the 1,000 leagues away might be in reference to lots of people are worshipping at the same time. It's like there's strength in numbers. They're trying to sing away the great other. But the
morning prayer
thing, just on the Radio Westeros thing, the lust powder that she's using on Jon inadvertently works on Ghost, and Ghost is really friendly to her, and this is why it just works out that and she's not wearing gloves in this scene either,
right?
So that gives her maybe a chance to, and she does tell us later on that the carved chest that she bought with her from Ashai is 3/4 empty, which means she's been using a lot of magic. She's been using a lot of powder. So,
well, they hugely hype that up in the show, don't they? That scene with Selyse and where the what's she called, Carice, the actress who plays Melisandre, like naked in the bath. They really play that element up. But that was one of the questions I had actually in the Mel chapter. We're skipping right ahead to the Mel chapter here, but about why Ghost was like that with her.
Yeah, no, I Radio Westeros have a thing. I think it's the Mel episode.
Okay.
AU wants to know, is it like the Night's Queen and the Night's King? He gave his seed and his soul. That does come up again in the Mel chapter, AU. So we might come back to that because Mance kind of says something a bit dodgy as well to Jon in that chapter. So if you don't mind, we might come back to that a little bit. Connie says Mad Crush vibes from Devon. Yeah. Originally when I read that, Connie, I thought you meant you had Mad Crush vibes on Devon. I was like, okay, Connie, whatever you're into. But
I think she is. I think she's drawing some kind of power from that attraction, and that's what her nourishment is. She doesn't need to eat because she's getting whatever fulfillment. I mean, I don't know whether that's all it is, or whether or not she's actually giving him what he wants, kind of thing, you know, as a young teenage boy, but who knows? It just seemed a bit weird to me.
I hope not, because I thought it was quite sweet, the whole Davos thing, but we'll come back to that later. The Rattleshirt fight, this is, for some people, this is where the Mance Rhaegar theory is shown to be true. I don't know how people come to that conclusion from this scene. I'm not completely discrediting it. I have no idea. But I don't know how people jump to this being the scene that proves it's Rhaegar.
No, me neither.
I don't know how I'd actually say this would be closer to proving it's Arthur Dayne than Rhaegar.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone, it's Arthur Dayne, right? Because he's such a good fighter here.
Yeah, he's very capable. Yeah.
And we haven't, like, I don't know how Mance would develop these skills within the Wildling network, if you know what I mean. He's very skillful. Like, Jon is one of the most skillful fighters for his age that we have seen, for sure. Yeah. But AU is saying Mance is Arthur for sure. I think it's definitely shown that it's Dayne more than anything else. And there's a nice little line about the dagger. Jon is actually really impressed by the whole thing, and Jon says, I think somebody else says that he could have stabbed me or something, and Jon says he had Rattleshirt says that he would have stabbed him had he had a knife, and Jon recognizes that he did have a knife and he still didn't stab him. And this made me think of the way the show did Tower of Joy.
Hang on a minute, hang on. Right, I need this to be clarified, and I'm talking to both of you, Kat and John AU, in the comments as well, and Ivan, if you're listening in. When we're talking about Mance potentially being anybody else, Rhaegar, Arthur Dayne, whoever, are we saying that they're disguised, they're glamoured?
No.
Or or we're just saying that's who they are, but wouldn't anybody at all recognize them? Wouldn't anybody at that point at the wall, any of the other like lords in command or whatever, not be able to recognize Arthur Dane or Rhaegar?
So this is my question about this, because Jaime goes unrecognized as Jaime once he loses his hand and he just looks terrible. Like how, like life is very rough beyond the wall. Like,
it is. I don't know. I mean, for Rhaegar,
how often would people see somebody's face in the Knight's Guard if they're wearing a helm?
The first time I heard about Mance potentially being somebody else or in disguise was James and LaDonna talking about him being glamoured, and it was something to do with he was somehow glamoured as
he'd be glamoured with
as Mance. That's what and that I always completely discounted anything to do with Mance being anybody else.
No, I mean,
because it's like this, you know, the double glamour, multi glamour. You know, come on.
No, I think there's plenty of times in this book where people are not recognized. Barristan isn't recognized. He travels all the way to Essos without getting recognized.
Yeah, you're right.
That's famous.
Right. Yeah.
I think we forget how far the north is from. Like, he's beyond the wall. The wildlings won't know him. Yes, he might get unlucky, but he's been beyond the wall long enough, I think, to be weathered.
I think I'm sticking to. I think Mance is Mance, but he is a Stark. There was just so much parallel between Jon
as Mance as Arthur, and I'm about like 25-75 in it just being Mance. 45% that this is just Mance.
But I think he is somebody though, in terms of like do you remember the earlier books when we were going through them, and there were so many references to Mance knowing intimately Winterfell and the surroundings and how Winterfell worked, and it's like I'm sticking to my theory of he is a Stark bastard. He was sent to the wall as Stark bastards are, like Jon. There were too many parallels between their experiences.
I agree. I think I don't mind the Arthur as Mance thing. I'm like I say I'm maybe 75% Mance, 24.5% Arthur, and about 0.5% that's Rhaegar.
Like, if it was anybody there at the Tower of Joy is Mance.
I don't see how
in disguise. Yeah. The purpose for that would be to reveal to Jon at some point who his parents were. I think we've got other people still within the book, within the story, that could fulfill that purpose without suddenly Arthur Dane being alive again.
However, just to my 24.5% chance that it's Arthur, that line with the knife, I think, might be significant, because that we talked about this when we did our reviews of the show. Howland Reed stabbing Arthur Dane in the back. I think there's going to be something similar to that it'll be an underhanded way in which Arthur Dane lost that fight.
Yeah.
Whether he died or whether he survived or whatever, it'll be an underhanded method that Howland Reed used. Something that's it wasn't very honourable.
I'm not discounting that I'm not discounting that he can be very weathered and completely looks nothing like he used to. I mean, God, look at
well, even Sept.
Brendan Rivers looks a bit different than how he used to. But it's when with the whole Mance thing, for me, it stops being credible when we start talking about a glamour within a glamour within a glamour within a, you know.
I don't think that's going to work. I don't think. Yeah. I think sometimes people, and this is true of anything, I think, in the A Song of Ice and Fire series, people land on a thing like glamouring. And I'm sure, like, as soon as this chapter came along, it was like, oh my God, anyone could be glamoured. And it's kind of like that. Anyone can come back from the dead.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, we even said it like a couple of weeks ago. Who knows if Lyanna Stark is actually dead? Where's the body? We don't know. Like anyone, like I'm
Yeah.
guilty of it all the time. But Ghost is Rhaegar, guys.
But I mean, the thing is, we're expecting it, aren't we? Because it's already in the book. It's already, we've had Barristan the Bold being revealed. You know, we have people in disguise all the time, so we're constantly searching for it.
Yeah.
But at the end of this chapter, we get this encounter with Mel and Jon, where she tells him that she's seen in the flames that his sister Arya is coming to the wall. She's escaping a marriage. She's wearing a grey cloak and she's on a dying horse. So this is the image that she's seen. What, I mean,
and
this...
She's only seen it once.
She's only seen it once. This like hugely goes into this is just a complete setup for the Mel chapter. But why is she doing this? Why is she trying to... Because she's basically trying to help him, isn't she? I've seen this happening. I know that you can't get involved because you eat damn vows, but... And then in the next chapter, obviously, we see that she's thought about this, you know, what the solution is to this. But it's all in Jon's favour. Why is she trying to help him?
We should probably get into it in the Mel chapter, because I feel like a lot of that is going to come back in the Mel chapter as well.
So at this stage, again, I think Jon has this mini warg episode, because he describes that he feels the magic in her. He feels the magic like emanating from her. Excuse me. And I think that that's Ghost experiencing that, not necessarily Jon.
Yeah. AU says he never stabbed him. He convinced Arthur needed to save Jon and made a way to keep him alive. Well, now I missed that part in the book, AU. I did. I guess that's the theory that's out there. Yeah. I mean, when I say stabbed him, I mean like that could be metaphor as well. Like if you stab somebody in the back, like there could be some way in which they made him yield, if you like, if he's alive. So
Mel and Ghost, my question at the end of this chapter is, what's that about? And I know that you've just talked about Radio Westeros and the lust powder and things, but it just, again, it goes back to that question of duality to me. We immediately presume that ice and fire are counter to each other, they're polar opposites. But there's an example here, a very obvious example of Mel, fire, Ghost, ice, old gods, being very friendly towards each other, comfortable around each other, almost complementary to each other. There's more of a feeling of a kind of balance there rather than opposing each other. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I feel like we automatically assume that anyone north of the wall is going to be on the side of ice. I don't necessarily think that's true of the Dark or the Starks. And yeah, I also, I'm not entirely sure Mel is all fire either. With some of the things she says in her own chapter. Question that she wants to go over to the ice side, over to the dark side.
Yeah.
But people idealize and the reality can be quite different. That's true. I mean, you know, that the Arthur thing, I mean, people may have had an image of him in their minds, for instance. Or are you talking about the fandom, Connie? But yeah, it's I won't be angry if Mance is Arthur. I think it'll be good either way. I trust George to make it good. But the Mance's Rhaegar thing, I don't see it, I'm afraid. And I definitely don't see glamours within glamours. I don't see how that would work. But who knows? I could be talking out of my arse. I usually do. All right, so big one, drum roll, please. Our last Davos chapter ever.
Is it? Oh yeah. Oh my god, of course it is. Yeah. Wow.
This I drew a little smiley face, well, a sad face with tears coming down its eyes. I love Davos chapters. This is the chapter that launches the Northern conspiracy theory into outer space, right? It's the where It is a fan favorite, and it's easy to see why, for sure. I love this chapter.
It's a very well, again, when you're experiencing a chapter like this for the first time, but again on a reread, it's just as enjoyable. It's those moments of revealing, you know, so you get lots of revelations, but also you get a little bit of, you get some payoff as well, and they're such enjoyable chapters to read. This could have been 3 times as long for me, and I'd completely forgotten.
Quickly it went. I was like, no, it's already over.
Yeah. It was. I totally forgot that at the beginning of this chapter, and actually for quite a while throughout the chapter, Davos is in captivity. I'd totally forgotten that the Manderleys had jailed Davos.
Well, I mean, I think they forgot as well, because it's like a hotel.
Yes, but in my mind, in this chapter, in my mind, the Mummer's farce at the, you know, at the, I can't remember what it was called. What's it called? The hall where the Manderleys are, the Mermaid's Hall or whatever it's called. Yeah. The with the phrase and Davos asking for, you know, support for Stannis and Willa, and, you know, we discussed it a couple of weeks ago. I thought that during that episode was when they dragged Davos away, and then Manderley did the whole, oh, I've eaten too much, I need to, you know, and nobody would think that he's not sat on the toilet for a good hour or whatever. I thought that all happened in the space of 1 chapter. I'd completely forgot that they'd. I mean, we say it's like a hotel, you know. It's very. He's not for wanting anything really.
Well, compared to Stannis's imprisonment,
but however, it's still torturous because he doesn't know at all that they're not going to take his head off. So he still has that dread every day, and he's thinking about his wife and his sons, and you know, he's reflecting on his life. He doesn't think, oh, this is pretty nice. This so they can't, you know, they must be keeping me alive. I'm not going to be beheaded. You know, it's still not a nice experience.
Connie says the Wolf's Den sounds like a rustic bar and grill up in the north. Yeah, I can't hear the Wolf's Den now. I'm thinking of Order of the Green Hand. But yeah, I mean, it's typical Davos, beautiful, like heartfelt reflection. What is he going to say to the children he barely knows?
Yeah.
What does he say to his wife? It's awful. It's so heartbreaking. And I love that we get Wyman Manderley through Davos and the Glovers and all this, because I feel like we can get a slightly impartial view of them. Yeah, it's not fully like, oh, these guys are good guys. I think I feel like we should be on our edge, or we should be on the ball here with them, or on edge a little bit, because I'm not entirely sure what's going on yet. This chapter had a bit of a feel of the Princess in the Tower chapter. Ariane Martell, a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, is there any significance in giving him the Book of the Seven? Or I don't think he asks for it. I think he asks for something to read, and that's the book they give him.
This is my theory. Okay. I think in this chapter, Davos withdraws from his role as a father. But at the same time, what he does is he dons the robes of the father.
Oh. Okay.
And I think there's a lot of symbolism in this. There's that he's got 7 sons. That was the book that he got, was the 7-pointed star when he asked for reading material. He wrote to his sons, so that's a kind of symbolic, you know, you may know, because I mean, this is all wrapped up in him thinking that he's going to die in this cell, or, you know, that what she called Lady Lucy is going to take his head off or whatever. But he writes to his sons. He tells that it's basically a goodbye letter to his children. But at the same time, at the end of this chapter, he's being asked to take on this massive mission where I think if we ever do see in the story, from whoever's point of view, Davos, Rickon, and Osha, because I think she will have taken on, he will see her as his mother.
Yeah.
At this age, and at this, at this point, I mean, a few years have gone by if they've been hanging around Skagos. I also don't think Skagos is, I don't think it's true that the Skagosi, I think they're a very clever race. I think they're spinning stories. I mean, what better way to make nobody ever come anywhere near you or have any trouble at all on your island?
Probably be like Wakanda.
Yeah, it could
they'll have technology like
Skagos forever.
But instead of Black Panthers, they'll have like unicorns.
But it could. I don't know if we've got any time at all to explore any of this, but they again, it's an elemental thing. Don't the Skagosi worship stone god or something? Some sort of. There's like it's opposed. It's like complete opposite to the Iron Islands.
Well, I wonder when we get Fire and Blood, will Alysanne try and fly over to Skagos?
Oh, now that would be interesting.
She can't get the dragon over the wall.
Yeah.
Why not?
Let's fly around. Yeah.
Fly over and see, are they actually eating people?
Yeah.
But then if they have the Wakanda dome, she won't be able to see anything.
I don't think it is. I think it's a very clever way of keeping people away from them. I think they've probably got quite a charmed, civilized life over there. And Osha has taken the role of Rickon's mother. And when Davos arrives, because he's kind of, I suppose, the most similar to Ned as a father figure would be somebody like Davos, in Rickon's eyes anyway. I mean, who knows? I think everyone's expecting Rickon to be this like crazy wild child running around.
It would be really interesting if he is very civilized and they have been amassing an army.
It could be that the experience that young Griff has had with, like, learning to be king is parallels what Rickon has been going through. They will have adopted him as some sort of leader, but especially with Shaggy Dog. But that's another thing as well in this chapter. I'd totally forgotten that they said that what Manderley wants is obviously is for Davos to go to Skagos. And retrieve Rickon, but also the wolf. The wolf is important to prove who Rickon is.
Well, I just want to go back to this idea with the Book of the Seven, and because the Manderleys are the only Northerners to worship the Seven, isn't that correct?
Yes.
So is this George telling us not to trust the Manderleys? I'm not sure. I want to believe them.
There's going to need to be a fair bit of kind of political to and fro in here, because what they're asking for is their liege lord, because there's some kind of promise that they'll never be able to repay to the Starks. But for that price, they're quite happy to adopt Stannis as king. So, forget the whole king in the north thing. Yeah. Don't worry about that. We'll accept Stannis as our king, but we must have Rickon Stark.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's more about the Stark. They need the Stark to be in Winterfell rather than they want the Stark as their king.
Maybe.
With the Manderleys now. I'm not sure about the Glovers or anyone else, but it's interesting that there's secret tunnels all the way from this prison, the Wolf's Den, to the castle. And I wonder, did the Manderleys, when they were tunneling and like building all these secret tunnels, did they discover old tunnels that were already there? Do they know something else? Because this is something that we'll see later on with Lady Dustin down in the crypts. And, it's the given thing is, they're trying to corroborate Wex's story
Yeah.
and to see. But is there more to it than that? Is there something that they know that about old magic, and this goes beyond religion? Maybe
this could be tied to the North remembers. Maybe what we think the North remembers is just, you know, some sort of battle cry to somehow bolster the North, and they don't. It's something
or the Red Wedding. Yeah.
You know, things have had but maybe it. You know, it's got to be.
It's got to be something deeper.
It's got to be deeper than that, and maybe even deeper underground. It's that, but there is the thing that links the Manderleys to the Starks is this debt that can never be repaid
for thousands of years.
Mm.
And the Manderleys, like, the Manderleys have amassed a large amount of wealth. They've built this beautiful city. They've so much money that they can build a fleet of ships and not have people to man them. And why were they allowed to do that? Without, like Starks didn't try to get more off of them by, like, it doesn't seem like there was any tension there with them or anyone else in the North. It doesn't seem like they were raided all that much. So how were they allowed to amass that much? Are they protecting something as well? The Manderleys?
Maybe. I've never really thought of the Manderleys being, like, you know, having their own agenda or...
well, Davos is
possibly
a bit uncomfortable with the idea that an imposter Davos was killed.
Yeah,
he's a little bit uncomfortable with that, but you can understand why Manderley was warned that he'd be made the next Reign by Tywin Lannister. Yeah. By the way, the Lannisters never remember because they're not that old a family, obviously. But yeah, just this. There's something that's not something someone else would do. And I think Wyman makes a comment like, "Oh, does it matter that he was a criminal? Like, he was just a criminal anyway." Like, to try and reassure Davos, but Davos is not. It doesn't sit comfortably with Davos that some innocent man was used as a pawn, and it just struck me as something that is maybe something old Starks would have done. You know, kill the one in protection of the good for the protection of the many. It's certainly something Tywin Lannister would do.
I mean, we get quite a lot of history in this chapter about the Wolf's Den, that it's older than White Harbour itself. So maybe even White Harbour was kind of built around the Wolf's Den.
Well, a den where wolves hide. Maybe they helped hide Starks.
Maybe. There's a lot of ancient politics though within the North. So we can't presume that all of the North are going to bandy together under Manderley and the Glovers and the good guys, you know, and they're going to banish the Boltons and the Karstarks and everything will be wonderful again, and they'll have Rickon as king in the North. This goes deep and way back. So it's described as being. It's a Stark place originally, so they were given this. It's some sort of gift that was given to them for something. Again, a debt that can never be. Why can it never be repaid? But anyway, a debt that can never be repaid, and that this place, this castle, the Wolf's Den, was passed from Stark to Stark, and it was passed to different branches of the Starks, like the Grey Starks. And they joined up with the Boltons at one point, so that kind of sounds a little bit now in the more up-to-date story. Sounds a bit like the Grey Starks sound a bit like the Karstarks. You know, different factions of Starks in the past have sided with the Boltons somehow. There's and there is a feeling that the Boltons have always wanted to be Starks.
Yeah.
There's the guy that actually finally took, the Stark that finally took control back of the Wolf's Den was, funnily enough, a Brandon Stark, and his nickname was Ice Eyes.
Wow.
So does the... I mean, Ned is described as having grey slates, like dirty grey ice, chipped ice eyes. And then we've obviously got the others, got the bright blue ice eyes. The whole thing this week for me is about duality and whether or not things are opposed or whether actually they're more aligned and in balance. Well, it's just that something's gone wrong somewhere, something's happened, and it's just thrown.
I mean, if one color was to describe the North, it's grey. You know, and grey is that neutral color. It's the place between the duality, right? Connie says, by the looks of the weirwood in White Harbour, pretty forgotten looking, yet huge. They're being watched for sure. She says, maybe there was a pact between the Starks, do not break or else, and the Grey Starks became extinct. Yeah. So I'm kind of fixated on that idea of what kind of debt can you not repay? Did the Starks give something that nobody else could give? Like, what is that?
Yeah, what would that be?
Robert at In Deep Geek thinks it's their dead, or at least, sorry, he does. I'm putting words in his mouth. He thinks the Stark have given their dead, so that might be the debt, maybe.
Maybe.
But I'm very interested in Robert Glover. He thinks that Ramsay is evil because he was born from rape.
Yeah.
And this throws a spanner in the Northern conspiracy in favor of Jon. Unless they know that Jon is it's not going to take Rob's will to legitimize Jon in the eyes of someone like Robert Glover.
No.
Ramsay has been legitimized by a king. Doesn't matter. He's still evil because he's base-born, and he's not only is he base-born, but he is or bastard-born, but he is of rape. So this is like a big no-no. So they have to have more information on Jon. Like, if they think, even if they think that Jon is Rhaegar's and Lyanna's, they're going to think that that's rape, right? That's what they'll think right now. So it'll have to be something else.
Well, I don't think that. I mean, again, going back to the TV show, they handle some of the nuanced stuff here around the politics in the North really badly in the TV show.
Nuance in the show? What are you talking about?
No, it was just, you know, a lot of it just made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Wasn't it Lyanna Stark in the TV show again that was like stood up and did this unnecessary second speech about it doesn't matter that he's a bastard, he's Ned Stark's son, and well, hey, okay, everything's fine then.
Yeah.
But I don't think Robert Glover or indeed Manderley or anybody in the North of any significance as even considered Jon. I think that they're just interested in Rickon.
I think so too. I don't see how they can go for Jon right now. First of all, right, if Rob, I missed a step in my thinking there. If Rob legitimizes Jon, okay, maybe that'll give them an option. But then, if it's revealed that Jon is the son of Lyanna Stark, without the knowledge that he's the legitimate son, like he wasn't born of rape, something very nasty could happen between the Starks. If that information comes out without there being something else, like without maybe a marriage, or like Lyanna was compliant or whatever, because they, like, the story at the moment is that Rhaegar raped Lyanna, right? That's been in the general kind of history of the country for decades now, almost 2 decades. So it'll be better for Jon right now if they only get Robb's will, and there's no kind of hints of him being Lyanna's son, because they really do need some evidence to come out that there's more to that. There's some kind of that Lyanna ran off with Rhaegar of her own, or like, I'm not making much sense here, but there's every chance that it could get out that he's Lyanna's son without it getting out that he's not a son of rape. Hopefully that made sense. Sunday. Sorry, folks.
Got you.
So Wex then. What do we think of Wex? He hid in a weirwood tree, right? In
for days.
So did the weirwood tree keep him hidden? Because other people were found.
Could have done. Could have just. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, it was very. It just sounded strange that he could just kind of like lived in the tree for days.
Exactly. Very strange. To the point that maybe it's not true, but I don't know. Do you think Wex will go with Davos? Do you think that Davos will be taking Wex with him?
Maybe. What else are they going to do with him? I mean, it would be interesting to find out a bit more about Wex, because there's something. It kind of comes across as very Ironborn personality. You know, he's like throwing knives around into maps and things, and kind of being very. He doesn't. He's mute, so he doesn't speak. But yeah, he seems to still say a lot. You know, so I think he would be an interesting character to explore a little bit more.
Because he's not at Winterfell, is he?
No.
He's there later, so he must be with Davos, right?
Yeah.
My only other question is, do they really want Rickon as king? Like,
they don't. Well, they don't. They can't, because they're saying that they would bend the knee to Stannis.
Yeah.
So Rickon can't be king in the north. They just obviously want their liege lord back in a Stark in Winterfell.
I'm still not entirely. Like, there's something else about this chapter that's really strange. At the very, very beginning of this chapter, Davos says that he'd prefer the thoughts of losing his head to losing his hands. And it made me wonder, when he lost his fingers, was there a threat of him losing his hands? Was there, I don't know, there's something like obviously losing your hands is horrendous. But losing your head, I'm not sure. I don't know. I feel like there's something more to that idea, like losing his hands. I don't know, this story about Stannis and the fingers.
Yeah, and it was brought up again in Mel's chapter later on.
There's something not quite right about it. We never get a description of it, first of all. I think the day I lost my fingers, I'd think about it at least once. I think about back to that day, maybe. The fact that he's such a fear of losing his hands, I wonder, is that actually covering up for the fact that he almost lost his hands and just lost fingers instead?
I mean, it must have been a traumatic experience. He makes it sound as though it was like, fair enough. you got me.
He does. He really does. And it's like, I think I'd remember that at least once, maybe. I don't know. Connie, AU, what do you guys think? AU, Agent of Euron from the Silence. Wex. Do you think Wex? Ooh, that's interesting.
That would be good.
That's very interesting. I like.
There's much more to explore with Wex, certainly.
Definitely too cocky.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For all he's seen, definitely too cocky. I don't know. I feel like I like the Grand Northern Conspiracy. I think George has left enough kind of clues to there being ulterior motives.
Definitely.
So don't. I feel like it should be enter at your own risk with the Northern Conspiracy, because all may not be as it seems. And I hope that when if John is revealed to be, if it's R plus L equals J, if that's true, I really hope that it all comes out at once. That it's not like, oh yeah, he's Lyanna's son born of rape, because that will change. I hope it's everything all at once. That it's I hope it's a legitimate thing, and that's all. Yeah, because otherwise it could get very nasty. Just based on what Ramsay is doing, if they have any hint that John could be like that, it could be bad news bears for John, literally. Bad news bears. And also, just one more thing about Manderley, the pooing. Has Manderley deliberately made himself fat?
So that he can have secret meetings.
No. As a method of like saying, like people underestimate Doran because he's overweight and he's gouty. Is it? There's a lot of mirroring here between the Dornish kind of plot and the Northern conspiracy and Manderley and Doran. Although Manderley is much more capable of keeping his children in the fold, the children he needs to. He actually shares ideas, which is probably more productive. But it just made me wonder, because he doesn't seem to enjoy food. Like, he doesn't seem to enjoy necessarily being fat. I wonder, is that part of like people just think I'm some fat food. It's fine, let them think I'm a fat food. Or is it a sign that he's a really greedy man?
Oh,
I feel like there's like it's a plot point with Doran, it's a plot point with Illyrio. The weight thing is like it's unusual at this time, and
I'm gonna have to get my head around all of this, because Manderley's been one of my favourite characters. I've always, he seems to be a real good guy and on the right side, and
I love
whatever the right side is.
But this really...
However, now that you mention it, there are some questions definitely from this chapter on closer inspection.
I feel like there's I don't know. I feel like we meet him through the nicest POV. Like, is it nicer than Davos?
No.
POV?
No.
Sam, maybe. Sam. But Davos is like, it's like a warm blanket. It's like, oh yes, it's Davos. Yeah. And oh, Wyman Manderley, oh, he's lovely. And then it's like, wait a minute. This chapter, when I was rereading, I was like, wait a minute.
And the Frey pie thing is really like that's
really dark.
It is dark. Yeah, that really is quite creepy when you think about it.
I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows?
I don't know. I want him to be a good guy, by the way.
Yeah. I think we're just seeing
like maybe George is setting it up so that he can move it in either direction.
And we're seeing things from as many different directions as well this time, particularly on this reread, because we're kind of bouncing thoughts and ideas and theories around with each other. So who knows? But I'm
loving Agent of Euron from the Silence. I'm loving
could be.
That's really good. All right. Dany 5.
So
Grolio. That's all I want to say.
Yeah.
Grolio.
So Trader stopped him. This is a desperate situation, again, with the two enemies, one within, one without. Trader stopped in Marine, apart from the poor landmen who are still prepared to trade, but they're not fighters. Grolio is exasperated completely because he's got no ships and no capability. As he said, he's not a shipbuilder. Barristan, we find out about him training knights, which I'm sure are going to have much more significance later on down the line. Shavepate has been following Hisdar around, and too many things add up for him where he's convinced, absolutely convinced, that Hisdar is the Harpy. Everyone seems to be closing in on Dany in this chapter. There's a lot of stuff going on from Astapor. So basically, Astapor has gone to shit, and the slaves are on the march towards Marine. And I can't remember who it is who describes them. I think, Brown Ben Plum and he brings these 3 Astapori back who explain what's been going on in Astapor, but he refers to them as mouths on feet, and they're bringing the bloody flux as well on the way to Meereen. And Dany's in a really, really difficult, impossible situation here. Again, this is the whole Meereen's not what to do with Dany in this situation, and the decision is taken that no, she won't, despite what Jorah has said in the past, despite what Barristan is saying now, despite what Zaro, Zoan, Doxus, Grolio, everyone, despite what everyone's saying, people are still going to be arriving and saying the same thing. Go back to Westeros, go back to Westeros. But she feels this commitment to... She's kind of deciding to stay and fight, and she understands that the only way she can do that is to try to bring peace within Meereen by marrying Hisdar. So that's the sort of basis of this chapter.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Is the Kate right about Hisdar? I feel like he kind of has to be, right? Like, it seems so obvious that it's too obvious for George R. R. Martin. It's like, I don't know.
I think there's a few of them that are in it together that we probably... I think the Shave Pate could quite easily be working with Hisdar. And I always forget the name of the guy, but Raznak, yeah, who's like the perfume seneschal.
I wonder though, is that like a red herring? Will he end up being the one that actually is the most trustworthy? Because she's so, like, she thinks he's the perfume seneschal.
Maybe. I mean, who could Dany trust in this situation apart from Barristan? But
I don't know. I love Barristan. I think Barristan is amazing. Please don't misconstrue what I'm about to say as being the Barristan hater. But is Barristan the best person in this particular situation to be giving advice? Like, on the military side, maybe, but in terms of like what's going on a socio-political level, I'm not sure. Like, I feel like they're all going to be overwhelmed in this situation.
The problem is she's got enemies everywhere, which he Barristan can recognize that, who the enemies are, but the added complication in this type of situation is any of them at any point could turn, and we know this because of what's happening with bloody what's his face, Quentin. We know from his point, they could just turn. So who do you trust?
Yeah, before we move on too far, speaking of trust, Connie and Barbara are talking about Wex, and Connie's wondering, is he the bastard of Euron or potentially one of Varys' tongueless birds? That's the one I heard. He's probably a little bird. And Barbara said Euron cut off the tongue. So yeah, I think that's what AU was saying. Yeah. I think either is bad news. So yeah, it's not good either way. I'm just interested in why he went after Rickon. I should have asked that earlier. Maybe you have some ideas in the chat. But anyway, why Rickon and not Bran?
Yeah.
Why not the older Stark?
Maybe you just thought it was easier to try and slip 2 people rather than what Bran had a bit of a party going along with it.
I guess. Yeah. Also, I suppose if there's more people with Bran, there's more chance of them being found. Rickon could actually go missing and never be found. So anyway, so Dany thinks again of this character. Now I'm going to butcher her name. Eroeh, Eroeh.
Oh,
Eroeh, which is kind of like Grolio, actually. There's row inside both of them. Anyway, she thinks about her again. She's like the individual personification for the group in Aesop, the many groups that he's going after, Says Bran is a cripple, so that may be why Wex didn't go after him, or Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, it probably, like you said, it probably makes sense to go after too. But anyway, yeah. So she thinks about this girl who was a girl she saved from being raped, and then when when Drogo died, the other Khals took her, raped her several times, and then killed her.
Mhm.
So, it kind of, yeah, it comes back to her. I think I looked it up. I think it comes back in Storm to her again. She regularly comes back as like the personification of what's happening. Basically, everybody's been raped and killed around her. It's
And
just,
she also vows at that time, when she first witnesses it happening, that if she ever sees Carl Pono again, that she will destroy him, that she'll kill him. And that's who she runs into at the end of Dance.
yeah, it makes me, I guess it's a good kind of reminder of who he is. But it also makes me think about what will the guilt of all of this, the burden of all of this, do to Dany psychologically? Like it can only make her, it can only like wear her down to the point where she's a nervous wreck, or make her so cold, which we see evidence of in this chapter where she says a dragon doesn't cry. Like it just, it seems to be like it's a lot for her to handle. The guilt of it all, you know.
Well, this kind of links into my main question for this chapter, and it just links into what you said there about her being overwhelmed and weighed down by this, the tragedy with Eroa, but also she's kind of using this as some sort of like moral compass for a guilt thing. But when the rider rides in to Marine on the pale mare, saying she's burning, that does sound a bit like potentially Dany's state of mind at the moment, with, you know, enemies everywhere. She can't turn around without knowing, you know, there's just enemies everywhere. So my question is Dany the pale mare?
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And she's pale because of her Targaryen hair, but she's also a mare because she's the Khaleesi. So she literally is a pale mare. And it was down to Dany and the destruction of Astapor in the first place. It completely went to shit, but all of this disease and the bloody flux and maybe that's why she's impervious. I think in one of the next chapters coming up, where she goes out into the crowds and her guards and her captains are all saying, "Oh my God, stay away from them, they're all diseased," and she refuses to. And it's like, oh, she must be somehow impervious to this disease. It's because she is the disease.
Like metaphorically or actually literally the disease?
Metaphorically, but I think that's it. I think that's the reason why she can't actually fall ill with it. But so they're described, the slaves here, the diseased slaves are described as sick, mouths on feet. So they're nothing but a massive burden coming her way. And they're diseased as well. That's the last thing that you want when you've got the Yunkai encroaching and there's going to be like all-out war. Well, the only thing that can happen in Dany's favour in this situation, as pointed out by Brown Ben Plum, is get your dragons under control. Yeah. They're your biggest weapon. And she knows that she can't even do that. But yet she decides to stay and fight and try to put things right, try to be a queen. And for this, obviously, she realizes that she needs. This
is the thing that's most detrimental to her, not being able to have those dragons by her side. She can't draw from them. She can't draw strength from them. And I mean, I really feel for her. It's just such a horrible situation to be in. But she is a foreign invader. Of course they want her out, you know, and of course disease is spreading. And as much as we like her and we know she's trying to do the right thing and she's trying to save loads of people, I mean, the description of what happens to the Yunkai burning the people in Astapor. Oh my god, it's horrendous. It's the Yunkai. Was it the Yunkai that burnt them?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it's just horrendous. It's really. It's just when you think about disease and like our modern understanding of disease, and how they're examining this guy that comes with this horse, and they examine his feces and stuff, and you're like, what are you doing? Stop.
Yeah,
everybody's gonna get worse. I feel like if she lets the dragons out, that might give her a path to some way out. I feel like mentally she's imprisoned, physically she's imprisoned, and it might also have something to do with the fact that the dragons are imprisoned. Barbara says Bran said he was going to the wall, so Wex thought he knew his destination. Of course, yeah, that's right. Osha says she's going to just take somewhere. She's going to take Rick on safe. Thanks, Barbara. Connie says Dany described how the Khal rode her at the end of each day.
Yeah, she's the pale mare.
Yeah, and he gives her a pale mare as a gift, right? Yeah, I mean, marrying his star. Good idea, bad idea.
She's had so many chances to just go back to Westeros, but she's seeing this as her. It's almost like a kind of training ground, isn't it, for her being a queen? What kind of queen is she going to be? Is it's that flip of a coin with the Targaryens? So she's testing out her abilities in somewhere that's a strange foreign land before she gets to grips with her ancestral home, and she can figure out what kind of queen she's going to be.
Why is she not even visiting the dragons? Because it only talks about the Unsullied dealing with them. Why? Like, and they're getting worse. The dragons, they're getting harder to interact with. But maybe they just want their mum.
Maybe.
I don't know why just is it too painful for her? It feels like she should at least be visiting them, right?
I think because she doesn't know what's going on with Drogon. I think she just like, what's the point in the other two if Drogon's not there?
God, she's a great mother, isn't she? Yeah, but I mean, it's horrible. I'm still not used to all the even like this is my second or third time rereading Dance. I think I listened to it once and read it once, and now I'm reading it again. I still find it difficult. All the new names, new names. It's so like stay in my brain, please.
It's very difficult. Yeah.
I just don't like in my brain. I'm just like, is there any point to remembering this? But Connie says that's why Quaid reminds her to remember who you are the dragons. Who you are, the dragons do you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. So the dragons will remind her who she is. She just needs to remember that. The Khalasar will probably remind her in Winds, right? Although, did anyone hear about the Guardian interview with George?
No.
Struggling with Winds.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I say nothing. Anyway, that's all I have for Dany.
Yes. Let's move on to Mel.
Mel, another drum roll. What a great chapter. This was a chapter when the first time I read Dance, I wasn't expecting at all. So like I was just like, whoa, we're getting inside of Mel's head? This is weird. Sorry, before we move on, AU says Dany has no mother figure and she is too young. Yeah, this is something I've said about Dany before. Dany never thinks about her mother. Really weird. It's like super weird. She never thinks about her mother. I think she mentions her mother once in Clash or something, or game, like it's just in passing.
Yeah.
It's only when Barristan brings her up that's like they talk a little bit about it, but nothing else. It's really weird that Dany doesn't think about her mother. Like every other character, you know, they kind of have different thoughts about different, even the Lannisters.
Yeah.
She doesn't think about her mother. There's something very odd about that.
There is.
And that might be a bit of a red flag. But anyway, yeah, sorry, Mel.
Okay, so let me just remind us all of some facts here that we pick up about Mel. Pardon? Okay, so Mel must always have a fire burning. She requires very little sleep, and she doesn't require food either. She was trained to see a danger to herself. That's the first thing that she looks for in the fires. And we get this revelation, which we've talked about tonight, about all these feeble tricks of alchemists, which are the powders and the smoke and the, I suppose to an extent, the glamours. It's all about the shadow and deception. And there's something about the bones as well. The bones protect you and the bones remember. That's interesting. We're in relation to Rattleshirt. But yeah, there's just so many other weird things that are happening here. Like there's blood, black and smoking blood trickling down her leg. She also obviously remembers this. She has, I don't know if this is some sort of waking dream, or when she does have some sleep, she dreams of the whispers of others. But she also has this name Melanie in Lot 7. We heard from Tyrion's chapter previously that a lot of the Red Priests are taken as children, as slaves, and trained up to become Red Priests. So we presume that this is what happens to Melanie or Melisandre now.
Connie has just blown my mind. Ned's bones missing, Davos's finger bones missing. Rattleshirt, the glamour only works with the bones.
The bones, remember.
She's using a glamour. What is she wearing that allows the glamour to work? It's almost like a Horcrux or something.
Yeah.
Or like you have to have, you know, something of that person in order to sell it. Yeah.
Do you think Mel's a good person? What do you think is? Where do you think she falls on the? What's she motivated by? Is she motivated by something that is good? Do you think that she just believes that it's good? What is she about? What do we find out about Mel in this chapter?
I don't know if Mel wants to be a slave or a master. She says in this chapter, wait, I have to get it. But before that, the bleeding thing, I've no idea what that is. Although, is there some sexual component to the R'hllor worship for women?
Could be.
She sees Jon's death, 1,000 skulls, and Bran and the three-eyed raven. Yeah, and 1,000 skulls. Is that all of the skulls around Bran? Or is that the skulls in Winterfell crypts?
I think there's some hard home foreshadowing here when she talks about great grey cliffs as well, and the fires in the cliffs. So I think
she lies to Jon, or convinces herself and Jon that's Eastwatch, but it's hard, right?
I think it's hard home, yeah. Fires in the Great Grey Cliffs, but she sees. So she's asking the flames and R'hllor to show the face of, basically, you know, Azor Ahai, the savior, the person who's going to save everybody from the darkness. And she gets this image of Jon Snow, and it's wolf, then man, then wolf again. And I know we've all talked about this a million times over and over again over the years. It's going to be clear from this chapter that what happens to Jon, what happens to Jon afterwards has something to do with Mel. Whether it's anything like it was in the TV show, not what he was like afterwards, but just the actual process, the ritual. Yeah.
So there's something else. She talks about not sharing. She has no one to share a bed with since Stannis is gone. But Devon is in the room while she's reading the flames. Devon is almost keeping her alive while she's doing this. It seems to take a lot out of her to do this. Like she ends up, it's a physical thing. Like it's also a psychological thing because she's getting all these painful flashbacks.
Yeah.
But it seems to be it causes a physical trauma as well. So it's quite a lot. But I love the way she says, "I'm the best at this."
Yeah, yeah.
She's like, "Oh, fuck me, how bad is everybody else?" Who told you were the best at this?
She's the best in her order at reading the flames. And even she is, I mean, she pleads with R'hllor, please show me your instrument. But she thinks she can also see, she sees what she thinks are the great others champions. I think this is what she thinks this is. The white wooden face. And again, it's that he sees me. A little bit like what we were saying about Nettle before, she sees me. And the wolf boy. So she sees Bran and she sees Bloodraven. And she associates those two with the great others champions. When she asks for R'hllor's instrument, she sees Jon Snow, or man, wolf. So that suggests that there's going to be, well, it suggests a few things, but to me, it suggests that there's going to be a battle between Bran and Jon.
Oh.
And it suggests that there may be, again, that duality. Is it ice versus fire? Is the fire religion closer to the ice? Is the fire magic closer to the ice magic rather than opposed to it? I don't know.
Who is she praying to? Is she praying to R'hllor or the Great Other, or are they the same thing? This is like, it gets so confusing in this chapter. She says, dawn, another day is given us. R'hllor be praised. The terrors of the night recede. She says that she doesn't sleep. With Stannis gone, her bed gets little use. And then she goes on to say, sleep is a little death. Dreams the whisperings of the other, who would drag us all into his eternal light. She says a little bit more. And then she says at the end of this paragraph, one day she would be free of dreams. Melanie, she thought, lost 7. And she says, she prays she would not sleep at all. So that to me sounds like a white. That to me sounds like what an other is. Free of sleep. It's as if you're not going to be haunted by your past ever again. That's not what a R'hllor offers. That's what the other offers. If you want to see the other.
And and if it's the other can bring you into the eternal light, isn't that what she wants?
I like sorry, AU, I don't necessarily think they're the same, but I'm wondering if Mel believes she's praying to R'hllor, but maybe she's actually, I don't know, maybe she's actually helping the other. If the other is like Night King or whatever it is, the ice part, because that to me does not sound like anything we've seen.
That quote, by the way, reminds me of an Edgar Allan Poe quote. I can't remember which book it's from, but he referred to sleep, those little slices of death, how I loathe them. And it just reminded me when she said sleep is a little death, because it can, we could get into a big philosophical conversation about it, but I've always liked that line. Sleep, little slices of death, how I loathe them. So she doesn't require sleep. She's definitely got some form of power. It's not just the powders and the shadows. And I mean, the glamour in itself is quite powerful. And this reference to the bones as well. The true enemy, she says, the true enemy makes the dead his soldiers. So do you think she is one of the dead soldiers?
I think she is. I think she's inadvertently, because she does everything wrong. I
I
think
mean,
she is
yeah,
inadvertently being a soldier for the wrong side. I mean, why is her power stronger nearest?
well, yeah.
Like I feel like it's poor old Mel is going to get like hoodwinked here.
Well, there's also maybe there's some link here or parallel to Cold Hands, because he's dead. I think everyone can agree that Cold Hands is definitely dead, but he's somehow sentient. He somehow has some sort of maybe it's not free will at all. Maybe it really isn't. Maybe he just believes he's doing the right thing.
There's something though about Mel. It reminded me of Clarice in Silence of the Lambs, where in order to get something from the cannibal Hannibal, she has to give him something. He feeds on her pain and on her repression and on the trauma of her past. And it's quite psychologically damaging for her, but she needs to do this. And it seems like every time Mel uses her magic or has to look into the fires, she gives something of herself, like every time. And to the point where it's almost like she's trapped in another form of slavery. Whatever flashbacks she's getting to when she was a slave, it feels like she's a slave again.
Well, that's like Beric. The way Beric described it, that almost, you're enslaved.
Oh, Connie says, is it like Sixth Sense? She doesn't know she's dead.
Could be. I mean, isn't it George or the actress or somebody who said, "Oh yeah, it's been confirmed that Mel is, however, 3,000 years old or whatever, but maybe she just died 3,000 years ago."
It could be that she's a white, but we are told over and over again that Kat remembers, but I don't know. I mean, like, who said it? I think it was Connie said Devon is going to be more wood for the fire. I feel like there's a lot of compassion in Mel. Like, she keeps Devon because she doesn't want. She says that Seaworth had suffered enough grief. She didn't want him to have lost another son.
It does sound like she's being quite kind there, doesn't it?
And if she can see harm in the flames that would come to her, keeping Devon close means that she can kind of keep him protected. Yeah. So I kind of feel like that sounds nice. That sounds okay. I mean, I know I realize I've been harder on Wyman Manderley tonight than I have on Mel. But I feel like I don't know. There is that story, about George R. R. Martin having an ice version of Mel made in a figure. There's something to do with the theme of slavery. It feels like nobody can ever quite escape their past, right? Like Davos, he's done so much to rise to be Hand of the King, and now he's back being a smuggler again.
Do you think there's any significance in going back to the numbers again? I'll just throw it in there. Lot 7.
Yeah, didn't notice that, but yeah.
And also when the Rangers come back, the dead Rangers, and she goes out to meet John. But there's reference to this story about the dead Rangers, and one of the, I can't remember who it was, but one of the Night's Watch said there could be 1,000 of them. Again, 1,000. Yeah. So we have this encounter with John and Mel where she takes him back to her rooms, and then we get the whole reveal with Rattleshirt and Mance. What I've got quite a few questions. First of all,
sorry, before you do that, it does say Lot 7, but her name is Melanie, which is one letter away from melody.
Yeah.
Which is the Song of Ice and Fire. So
yeah.
That just occurred to me. Sorry. Anyway, we were going to say about
she she sees, when she's looking in the flames at one point, she sees great winged shadows. So that's dragons, isn't it? Great winged shadows.
Well, yes. She doesn't come to that conclusion, does she?
No, she just describes it, what she sees as great winged shadows. But I'm just wondering, does that mean that we will see dragons at the wall at some point? I'm dying to know what I
feel like Fire and Blood is going to break us.
Fire and Blood will hopefully give us a bit more information about the dragons and the north.
Oh, Lady Laura likes my shirt. How are you, Lady Laura? Welcome. This is my Night of the Laughing Speaker. Thank you.
So we've got fire is represented as life, heat, light, and then we've got ice, which is represented as death, cold, dark. Dragons at the wall would be ice and fire. So yeah, I'm dying to know what happens there, what that's all about. Why does okay, this relates specifically to the conversation right at the very end of the chapter with Rattleshirt. Why does Mance refer to Tormund as an old fraud?
I missed that. Didn't notice that.
He says he's talking about Tormund, like, you know, Jon's quite friendly with Tormund, and equally Tormund's quite friendly with him, but he refers to him as, he describes him as an old fraud. And I thought,
Is it Order of the Green Hand think that's Hightower or one of them?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know we've had a little bit of a backstory with Tormund and the bear. And...
Well, yeah, he does tell tall tales for sure. Maybe that's what referencing.
Maybe it is.
Just on the dragons there, Mel does say that she can unleash demons of some description.
Yeah.
She can break whatever magic is keeping the dragons. Oh, if she can break the magic that's keeping the dragons south, and if she does that, and that's what the others want, so they can get a dragon, she will inadvertently help the other side.
Yeah. I think she's bound to do something like that. There's so much misrepresentation.
Oh, feck, Mel, what did you do?
Yeah. I think there's every chance of that. And just the other question I had was about the bag of finger bones and Davos and Bones Remember, but we've already covered that. There's
so every
so
line
much in this chapter. Every single line.
Tormund is Hightower. That's what the Order of the Green Hand suggests as well. But yeah, it could be a very innocent thing. Maybe it's boinking Mormont women, as Connie says so eloquently. So what else do I have here? Oh yeah, I mean, there's something quite charming about the way Mel tries to manipulate people, and it takes away from the magic a lot. Like, she's there and the ice is melting around as she walks. She's like, I hope Jon notices.
Yeah.
Come on, Jon. Come on. And of course, Jon is like, whatever. And I just picked one of my brother's heads off. Maybe for a minute, you and your magic tricks. She talks about keeping guards around her for show, and mentions something, the trappings of power, which I couldn't quite make fit. What trappings of power is she talking about? Is that her power, that she can't seem too powerful? Or is it that you have to make yourself look powerful by having the guards around? It was just an interesting little kind of throwaway from her.
It is. She's a very complex character. I think really that line's more about it. For Mel, everything's about shadow and deception. And I think she knows, as a woman, she's probably very vulnerable at the wall. And she has to put on, again, you know, as long as everybody else is scared of me and what they think I might be capable of, then I'll be okay. So it's, you know, I need to come across as powerful.
Do you think she'll stop hitting on Jon if he's like whited.
I don't know. She's diverted all of her attentions now from Stannis to Jon.
She is hot for Jon. Like,
Yeah.
it's really full on.
But at the same time, she knows deep down that Jon doesn't trust her, but she just feels, well, it doesn't. In a way, that doesn't really matter, because as long as he knows that he can make use of me.
Yeah.
So,
Lady Laura says, what gets me about Mel is she's very sure of her predictions, then she's not. I don't get it. Yeah. And then she changes them. And Connie says power resides where people believe it resides. Yeah, it is similar trappings of power. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask about was Mance. And one of the things that he says, which it lent to AU's belief that it's Arthur Dane, but he does make a comment about tasting the Dornishman's wife. And it doesn't seem to be of the song. There's something else. So it suggests that Mance has maybe been a bit more
of a relationship with a Dornish woman. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. But who would that be? But yeah. Lady Laura is also loving the Arthur Dane theory. I mean, yeah. Maybe my 25% will increase when I get to...
It could. It might do.
And, oh yeah, she likes Jon because he has some sort of king's blood. It does make me wonder that if the Arthur Dane thing is true, it explains why she doesn't kill Mance.
Yeah, there's got to be a motivation there. I mean, he's coming in handy at the moment because obviously she's using him as an instrument to save, to get herself into Jon's favor yet again by agreeing to save Arya or whoever this person is, and that this is a gift from R'hllor. I mean, she was sent over, wasn't she, apparently, to try and, to ingratiate herself with the king. I mean, this is her gig. This is what she does. She identifies somebody as being the instrument of R'hllor, and then she just throws everything at them.
I'm not convinced this woman will burn Shireen. I'm not convinced.
No, I just hope it goes differently in the books.
I think Shireen will burn, but I think Selyse might do it, or Stannis might do it. And I don't know. Part of me thinks Mel might burn Stannis. I don't know. If she's going to burn anyone, I think it'll be Stannis. I don't know why, but anyone know why Mel is so picky about who she has boinkings with? That's the new word now, boinkings. With her shadow babies. She's hit on Davos and Jon, but nobody else that we know of.
Well, and she doesn't have Stannis in her bed anymore, so she needs to get this nourishment thing from somebody.
Do you think that was more what Stannis wanted?
No, I think
shadow babies.
This is the manifestation of this nourishment, isn't it?
Right.
This is what the blood is running down her leg. Maybe it's because she's not been able to have Stannis's nourishment to then, conceive of a shadow baby. I don't know. I'm not quite sure how that whole shadow baby fertility thing really works, but she's getting some sort of fulfillment / nourishment that means that she can exist. I mean, who else can live without sleeping and eating? You've got to be dead, really, haven't you?
And what kind of position? We don't get much of a description of what position is she in. Like, what is she actually doing when reading the flames? Like, what? Like, is she just sitting there in front of the fire? Or is there something, like, she gets very thirsty? Like, is there something else going on? Like, is there something sexual happening with Devon? Like, you guys have been, I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe.
Oh, hi, Jen. Thanks for coming along. Yeah, I don't know. Lady Laura says, think her magic and shadow babies only work with someone with the blood she talks about. The red god guides. Yeah. So gross. I mean, there seems to be an element of blood magic throughout all of these.
Well, yeah, and then you've got blood and fire. So there's lots of crossovers between what's connected to what. Just there's so many ways of interpreting this, and so many clues, and that, you know, that's the interesting part of it.
So, why do you think Mance is so eager to help Jon?
I think it's going back to what my old theory is about him being a Stark bastard. It's an opportunity for him to go back to Winterfell again.
Do you think he'll be the one to take back Winterfell?
That would be wonderful if he was.
Lan, the clever type.
Like, yeah. I'd love that to happen, actually.
I think that would be cool, actually. I think it'd be nice if it wasn't.
And then there'd be that, like, well, you can't because there always has to be a Stark in Winterfell, and then something's revealed where it's like, but you know, Mance is the Stark in Winterfell. Yeah.
That would be good. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like he's very genuine in wanting to help, for sure. But he doesn't want to wear the bones of Rattleshirt as well. We didn't really talk about that. Even though she says that that's the thing that's keeping this whole glamour going. People see what they want to see. It feels like the magic isn't maybe not as powerful yet as she needs it to be. And I wonder what needs to happen what does she have to do in order for the magic to really, it feels like it's not going to be burning. It's going to be something else, maybe.
What do you think the wall is a blockage in magic? I mean, there's lots of spells woven into the wall to prevent passage from what, you know, there are kind of rules and vows and all sorts of magical stuff. Maybe the wall coming down changes everything for the, you know, magical opportunity.
After this read, I kind of feel that maybe Mel is some sort of rare conduit between the song of Ice and Fire, where she is a song. Like it's a rare conduit to have somebody that can work both sides. There's definitely things that she says that's really feeding into the ice side rather than the fire side. And that instinctively maybe she recognizes that ability to be a conduit in Jon.
I think there's a lot. I was just thinking about what you were saying about George struggling to write Winds of Winter. I think one of the things I'm looking forward to finding out, and I hope we do, is much more about ice magic in the Winds of Winter, because it's the thing that we know very little about. We know spooky stuff about the old gods and the and the blood sacrifices to the Waywoods and stuff, but actually, you know, like just the swords that the others carry around, and there's lots of other magical stuff.
The volume of supplementary textual material George has provided on Targaryens and fire magic, if you like, the dragon part, just that little excerpt from Fire and Blood that now we're all like, whoa, a dragon can't cross a wall, what's going on, mind blown. Like, it feels like we're gearing up to, actually ice magic, it's maybe much more closely linked to Targaryen magic than we think.
Maybe, yeah.
It's the bastardized form of Targaryen magic. Maybe it's the mirror version of it. Maybe it's a complete opposite. But he has done virtually no supplementary materials, right? Like, it's the World of Ice and Fire, the Dunk and Egg stuff, but even that is based around a Targaryen. So there's not that much. I mean, we got the She-Wolves of Winterfell, right? But that wasn't released, was it?
Wasn't it in one of the, like, in a compendium book somewhere?
I don't think I've read it. Has anyone read the She-Wolves?
I haven't either.
Or was it just mentioned in somewhere and that's why it's in my head? But I feel like there's just not as much, and yeah, that has to be the key.
We need more information about that. We know lots about fire magic, loads about blood magic.
Here's my hope: after Winds is released, I bet we get a flood of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because he can't give that away. Because to give that away is to give too much away about the children,
yeah,
parks.
Yeah.
And that really is becoming. Like, think of how much we know about Essos now just through Dany's chapter. I feel like I know more about Marine than I do about Winterfell.
Yeah, that's true.
Lady Laura says, read a bit of an article that Gurm did with Guardian and said when he writes, he becomes entranced and so absorbed that he shuts out the world entirely. Not surprised. Yeah, definitely, he's very careful, very, very careful about how he approaches his writing, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like us with nail polish, Claire.
That's true.
You came here for Song of Ice and Fire and I made a nail polish reference.
So next week we have Reek again.
Reek 3 to Dany 6. This is our last Reek chapter, I believe. I think the next one is the Ghost of Winterfell or the Prince of Winterfell, Ghost of Winterfell.
Oh, right, okay.
I think this is our last Reek chapter. I don't think there's a Reek 4. I could be wrong about that. I usually am. But we have Tyrion 8, Bran 3, Jon 7, and Dany 6.
Yeah.
Well, look forward to that Bran chapter.
Yeah, I was just going to say the Bran one should be quite interesting. And
absolutely. So
Tyrion again, yeah. Tyrion becomes a slave.
Yeah, and more Penny. Poor Penny. So thank you so much to everybody in the chat. Catherine shuts out the world, yes. Poor I I find like cold cups of tea. He's been in at some stage and left a cup of tea and then gone again. But I bet Stuart is the same, right? Just when you're polishing your nails, that's it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Aaron is banging the dog bowl off the but thank you so much to everybody. I hope you all have a great week. And thank you, Claire.
You're welcome. See you next week, everyone.
Next week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.